Thank you. No pressure. As you know, I love worship, praise and worship. I love coming up here and singing. When it comes to speaking, that's a different story. I'm quite reserved when it comes to speaking about my life. And that's just the way it has been for me over my 60 years on this planet so far. I felt God just wanted me to share or wanted me to tell you my story kind of thing. So I'm going to try and take you on a journey from when I was young to where I am now. Now that's 60 years. I'm going to try and condense that into 10-15 minutes and see how this goes. Anyway, I'm going to start at the beginning. I was born in Glasgow since the age of 8-year-old. I moved when I was 8. I'll get to why we moved when I was 8. Now, I believe God's hand in my life has been prevalent for a long, long time. From the day I was born, God's hand was on my life, and I'll tell you why. Where we stayed in Glasgow, it was called Townhead. If anyone knows Townhead, I lived there. And it was tenements, apartment blocks almost, of 3 I think it was at the time. And we stayed in the first one. Certain things in my life happened to me from a very young age. I fell out a window, 20 feet at the age of 6. I got ran over by a car at the age of 7. A speeding van actually it was. Now I survived these 2 things without pretty much any harm to myself. And other things happened as well, that my mum and dad decided it's time to move. My mum was from Aberdeen, my dad was from Glasgow. My dad didn't want to move, my mum did. She was desperate to move through this way. All her family was in Glasgow. Anyway, the decision was made. I'm one of 5 brothers, one of 5 boys, and I'm the oldest. So off we went. My mum moved us to Inverkieran, where I spent most of my young life growing up. Became very passionate about football, sports in general I was very good at. I never knew God at this particular juncture in my life. I would just happily, merrily go along my way. From the age of 8 when we moved, up until about 16, 17, I didn't know God. So I was quite happy with my life at that particular time, doing as kids do. It was pretty straightforward after the things that happened to me. But not only that, I didn't just fall out a window or get knocked over by a van. I was in a major crash when I was 24. Head-on collision with another car. I was driving at the time. My car was wrecked. If you've seen the car, I took pictures of it and it was mangled. And I walked away with a bruised jaw. I mean, you might say that's lucky, but it's not lucky. I still believe God's hand has been on my life and spared me from this for a reason, which I didn't know until later on in my life. I had a heart attack 7 years ago. That could have went a totally different way. The car crash could have went a different way. The falling out the window, I was just unlucky, but I wasn't unlucky. I believe the enemy was trying to remove me from this earth too quick. Howsoever, my mum and dad went to Inverkieran Baptist Church, and I was never in that church. My mum every Sunday would come to me and go, "Allan, do you want to go to church?" And I'm like, "No." Every Sunday without fail for about a year she would ask me, "Do you want to go to church?" "I don't want to go to church, Mum." And she used to leave me praise and worship CDs around the place for me to listen to. Hence my love of praise and worship due to my mother. So anyway, one day I decided, I turned around and I says to my mum on this one particular Sunday, I says, "Mum, I'm going to come to church." She never even asked me, I just said, "I'm going to come to church." Saved her the bother. And along to church I went. Now that time in Inverkieran, I was going back, 17, quite a while now. It was pews like we had not so long ago. We got ours removed. And I hated it. I sat in these pews for the first time, listening to whoever it was at the time, I can't remember. And I went back though, and I continued to go back, because I was intrigued. I always knew in my life there was a higher purpose for me. I was a bit of a soul searcher. There was a bit of, in me, I felt different. I knew there was something about me that was different to other people. And that, again, didn't become prevalent until later on in my life. So, there it started for me. I'm trying to think now how I gave my life to the Lord now. Yeah. It went on for a while. I was probably in the church for about a year after that, so I was about 18 or so. And I was invited to go to is it Louis Palou rally, and it was in the Usher Hall in Edinburgh, that's right. So I went there with a load of young folk, and I remember the call. I was asked to go forward, well, like a lot of us were at that time. It was huge, it was massive, there was loads of people. And I committed my life to the Lord on that particular night. And there was no bells and whistles. It was just that I felt I had to give my heart to the Lord. I said the prayer, and I thought that was it. It wasn't it. My journey as a Christian began in Inverkeithing. And I developed over the years doing different things, getting youth work and things like that, got involved in different things, loads of stuff. I remember I was very blinkered, like a horse, put these things in the blinker. I was very driven in this sense where I didn't want to drink, I didn't want to do this. My focus was on God and nothing else. And that's how I was. And that worked for me. And my relationship with God grew. About, did I say 24? I had that car crash. It was after that, I'm trying to think of the call now. Had the car crash, that's right. And then I disappeared to do a ministry DTS time with YWAM, Youth with a Mission. It was called Discipleship Training School. And I took a year out to do this training school. Over in Dumbarton it was at the time, called Overton House. A big, huge, massive house where folk all over came and learned about God and learned about evangelism and taking it onto the streets, which I did. I ended up in Portugal, ministering in Portugal through my music, through street evangelism, drama. I was involved in drama, loads of things like that. And everything was going along swimmingly, or so I thought. I loved life, I loved God, I loved people around me, I loved witnessing to people, and I saw many people come to know God through my faith, which was amazing. And then it all changed. I'm going to take a drink here. Life throws you curveballs, doesn't it? And I had a few of them. Just when I thought things were great, everything was going swimmingly, it soon changed. From the age of my late 30s, probably to the mid 40s, I changed my path. I went from who I was as a stalwart in the church, I suppose, a really good Christian guy, to on a road of self-destruction. I took that road because I fell out with God. I didn't like myself for various reasons. I can't go into all the reasons why I ended up in this path. But it was horrendous. So much so that was another avenue, another road where probably I wouldn't have been here if I continued, because I ended up in drugs, which wasn't like me. I was drinking, I was sleeping around, things like that, which I hated in my life. But God's good. God never left me. I thought he did. And that's where I was at that time. And it was tough, knowing everything that you knew about God and how I was as a person, to totally go the opposite way. I think it was probably because I never did those kind of things when I was younger, because I prided myself in being who I was. And all of a sudden, I was like, I don't want to be that person anymore, I want to be this person. I thought it was better. But it wasn't better, it was just me, I don't know, being someone else. So that's where I was at that particular juncture in my life, and it came to a crossroads where I thought, I can't live like this anymore. I'm either going to kill myself, or what I was doing would kill me. So it changed. And I never, ever turned my back on God. I turned my back on the church. I turned my back on Christians who I thought were Christians, but they weren't. And that happens, I'm afraid, as we know, in the church life. And I'm trying to think what did bring me back was totally God. I mean, or maybe it was the love of a good woman, Marnie, my wife today. I don't know, probably it was actually. Because at that time when I met Marnie, I was still taking drugs and stuff. And I was involved in church again, but I was still behaving the way I was behaving. Nobody knew that, but I knew it, God knew it. And Marnie knew it. And she never once said to me, you have to stop these things, like people used to say to me in the past, you need to stop this, you need to be a certain way. Marnie was never like that. She left me alone with it until I decided, with God's help, that I would come away from that. And I did. Kind of cleaned up my act, got myself together, eventually, and got back into church, got back into my music, which I loved, which I put aside for a long time. And pretty much they say the rest is history, but it isn't, really. My life now is where I'm at, and I love God for that, for never leaving me, for never forsaking me. When I turned my back, he never turned his back on me. And that's where I am today. This is why I'm at this church. Marnie and I got married here 2010, and it was the best day of our lives, as most of you will remember. And we've been here ever since. And things have changed in our lives in that respect. Marnie's no longer here for a while because of work and stuff like that, and it's very difficult to. So these are other avenues that we have to sort of grow together in and try and work out in our lives with God. But I'm here because God has called me here. And I've never liked talking about my testimony or my story, but a lot of folk don't really know that much about me and that I went through these kind of things. But it's for a reason. I always thought, in the beginning my testimony was pretty lame. How I came to know God was pretty lame. And I always, people say, give you a testimony. I went, I've not got a great testimony. Look at your testimony, you did what? But me, I was like, no. But then that changed, as I've just told you, about the things that happened in my life. And I suppose I wouldn't have it any other way, because it didn't define me, but it made me who I am today. It made me a far better person. It made me to be able to get in touch with people who were struggling in the same kind of vein, with drugs, alcohol, whatever. And now I could realise and understand what they were going through, and say, I know what it's like, but I didn't. I know what it's like now. When I speak to someone who's struggling, I can identify with that and say, I get you. And then I can tell them why, and they're like, anyway. So that's me. That's pretty much my story. And it hasn't ended. In some ways it's just begun still for me. And God has got big plans, I think, for all of us, if we'll only allow Him to share that with us, instead of holding on to the past, holding on to the things that haunt us, holding on to things that want us that God doesn't want in our lives. And I'm terrible for that. But it's still, I am a work in progress. But for me, God is my life. And nothing will ever shake that. It doesn't mean to say tomorrow it's going to be a good day. I could still have a bad day tomorrow, next day, whatever. So that's my story, pretty much. There's loads of other stuff. that I couldn't really go into. But it is what it is. And God's good. So thank you for being patient with me in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amen.